after the passage of the TCPA, the Telephone Consumer Protection Act of 1991.
There's kind of this zone that people shouldn't be able to kind of enter without our permission. The idea is that automated calls in particular can be quite invasive.
Constitutional law professor Fred Smith explains how this consumer-based law is now under scrutiny in front of the highest court in the land. The American Association of Political Consultants, represented by attorney Roman Martinez, wants to use automatic dialers to share their political messages during campaigns. And they're using one of the TCPA's loopholes.
So one exception is if someone has agreed to receive automated calls. Another exception is if it's about government debt. Sure, right? So the legal argument, again, is that if they're allowing other people to do it, right? So if they're allowing emergency messages, so that's one exception. If they're allowing for the collection of debt, or if they're allowing it perhaps even when someone has agreed to it, then they should be able to do this too. And in particular, perhaps, that they should be able to engage in the type of speech that we most associate with the First Amendment. Right, namely political speech.
The lower court held in favor of the political consultants last year, finding that the exception allowing government debt collectors to use robocalls is unconstitutional. The FCC and U.S. Attorney General William Barr appealed. Represented by the Solicitor General's office, they'll argue the law doesn't restrict the content of the call and doesn't infringe on free speech.
This is a privacy issue for me. It's a privacy issue for everyone.
Professor Pam See says the question over the law's exception could threaten the entire act.
If the TCPA is thrown out, then we could be put back into a position where we are all of a sudden getting those calls again, and we no longer have that privacy. I see that as a hornet's nest and a real problem.
Smith says while odds are low, the court will gut the entire TCPA if the justices do hold in favor of the political consultants.
You can expect that you will continue to be able to get these sorts of automated calls that we all love, and that you perhaps will get more of them, especially around election time.
Oh, I prefer the real telemarketers because I go into character. But the robocalls, you can't bust the chops. Let's bring in Julia Janae. Julia?
Also, the political consultants were right about that exception being unconstitutional, but they didn't give them what they wanted. They did not gut the act, and constitutional law professor Pam See shows us that breakdown from these justices.
What that split says to me is that they were certainly divided over what specific tests they wanted to apply to the situation. They were not clear about what the First Amendment actually meant in this particular situation, and they were indecisive. There were at least 5 of them that said, this is a strict scrutiny application, and that's that. We're going strict scrutiny all the way. And one that said, you know what, let's look at intermediate scrutiny. And then intermediate is just that mid-level, that it should pass muster here. So being all over the board like that tells me that there could be some challenges later. There might be some revisions to the law later.
And we often say, yeah, we're still getting robocalls even though there is this act that says they're illegal, but credible companies typically don't use robocalls, or they open themselves up to lawsuits like Facebook. They're actually going to be heard by the Supreme Court for allegedly sending these text messages that were unsolicited. So it's something that's still happening, and yes, the Supreme Court does care about your text messages.
All right, Julie Janae, thank you so much. Appreciate it. When we come back, folks.